athletes want one thing from strength and conditioning, and that is to see improvement. And it doesn't matter who I am, what color I am, what I look like, but I promise you I can get results. And once they see themselves getting stronger, getting faster, getting more powerful, getting whatever the goal is to be attained, and that I care about them as humans, they're not going to care that I'm a woman standing in front of them.
If you're willing to pour into them, they're probably going to give something back to you, right? And so I think the ceiling is the limit, right? If you're qualified, if you're good at what you do, if you love what you do, if that's where your passion is, like go, right? Like learn from everybody around you and just attack it head on, just like you would anything else.
We're so very fortunate to have three phenomenal partners of the podcast. Play, Rock Daisy, and Output are all companies that I've worked with for many years and fully endorse. Make sure that you support them when you can, or let them know when you see them how much you appreciate them being part of this podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the CEO Strength Coach podcast. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and fired up about this one. This was one of those episodes that I thought that I wanted to make sure I did when we had these roundtable and just talking about the advancement of the field, the diversity of it, the gender equality of it, and wanted to make sure that I had two friends on, Kathy Wagner, and I go back. I go back with both of these before they had their married names. That's how far we go back. Kathy and I are friends. We basically came in the profession about the same time, and just through conferences and getting to know each other. Just somebody that I've always had a lot of respect for and has done it the right way for a long time in this profession. And I can say that because we're both that old. Val is almost like a daughter, almost like a little sister to me. Known Val for a long time as well. She's married to one of my former staff members, and their family means a lot to our family, and it's special to have her on as well. So, guys, I appreciate you coming on, Sharon, and looking forward to this one.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
So let's talk a little bit about. Let's start with you. This field has changed a lot in the time that we've been in it, both from just the field itself and the representation of women in this field. Talk a little bit about when you got in, what it looked like, and what are some of the good things that you've seen, and what are some of the bad things that you've seen in your, what was it? I mean, just probably 25 years in, 20.
It's year 26, I think. So yeah. It's been a minute. Yeah, you kind of aged me. You said we're old friends and Val's like a daughter. In the introduction itself, I got, shows my age, right? No, it has. It's changed. Representation especially has changed. I remember when I went to my first conference and we had the female breakfast, and I think there were 6 of us at the table, and we passed around a Post-it note and said, write down your name and number. And now when I go to a female breakfast, there's hundreds of us, and there's a Google Doc that goes around. And so that's been really cool to see, just the advancement and opportunity for women. And we have a minority breakfast, an opportunity there as well. None of that existed. My first boss, I had all men's clothes, and one of the coach's wives asked him, are you not going to buy her any women's clothes? And he goes, no, I'm an equal opportunist. She can have the same men's clothes I have. Luckily it was okay. They fit me fine, but it was kind of comical when you think about it now. As a person that does hire young women, I ask them, do you want a women's polo or a men's polo? Things simple like that weren't even discussed when I started. It wasn't even thought about. You're getting a men's shirt because you're surrounded by men. So I think that's interesting and funny and good advancement all at the same time, right? I think just in general, staffs have grown. I mean, I look back at my time at Ohio State, we had 6 people on staff. And I couldn't tell you how many they have now, more than I could count, right? And so I just think the support of administration and college athletics in general to grow us and understand that one person can't do 8 teams effectively, and provide all the resources and services that we can provide now that our staffs have grown, have been fun. We can get into the weeds a little later in the show with the technology and trainings and how things have really changed. But the biggest thing is it's fun to see young women, and then women stay, right? When I first started, women get in it in 2 years, they get out of it. And now there's several that have made it to that 8 to 10 year mark. And that to me, it's kind of a pivotal mark. Once you can get to that, you can then kind of hold on because you've kind of settled in a little bit and hopefully not moving quite as much. And, maybe your life has settled a little bit to make it a little easier. But no, absolutely. It's been good to me for 25 years.
Yeah, it's what years is for you now, Val?
I've been at Notre Dame for 5, and college strength finishing for 7, and then full-time strength coach. I don't even know, coach 20, if we go post bobsled days, 12.
Right. Well, relatively, you got in maybe in the last decade or so, right? And so what drove you to this field? What was attractive to it for you?
So I was the typical tore their ACL, figured out that you could come back stronger, and that there's a group of people that are willing to help you get better. And so that's what drove me to that field initially. And then actually I met you, coach, and I met Fred, and the idea that you could have a team and watch them grow over 4 years, first being in the private sector where if you had a college group, they'd come in for a few weeks, they'd leave you. You have constant turnover of like who's coming in and getting those services from you. And it was really hard sometimes to like watch and buy in and really like get at the root of like someone's why and what drives them and how to make them better. And so I envied that of what you guys were doing at Eastern Michigan at the time. And so when I decided to go do my PhD, I just remember walking into Ruben Mendoza's office and I was like, "Hi, my name is Val. What do you need help with?" And I just kept showing up every day, and he gradually started letting me work with his teams, and I would watch those classes grow. And I was like, if I'm going to be a strength coach, I need to be working in a team setting. Like this is where it's at. This is who I am. I want to help somebody not only with their performance while they're at the school, but also just with their long-term health, well-being, right, and growing individually. And so that's what really drove me to get the push to stay in this side of the field. And I, I haven't looked back since. So I love it.
Yeah, and you guys both do it at a really, really high level at the places that you're at. Kathy, you've been able to grow into a director position, which I mean, you could probably count on maybe two hands the number of true directors that are women in this field. I mean, maybe more than that, but talk a little bit about the challenges with maybe women rising to leadership roles in this field.
Yeah, well, I'm in a unique situation in that I created this program from the ground up. I'm the first full-time strength coach they've ever hired. So I credit the administration at the time being willing to put a woman in that position. I mean, that was 17 years ago I came here. So think back to 17 years, there still weren't a lot of women in the industry, right? And so I'm thankful they were willing to take a chance on me. We also don't sponsor football here. But I was the director at Wyoming, and we did have football. So I do think it is a challenge because a lot of times the female is not the football person. A lot of places football is the driving ship, and that's okay, right? And so I think you just have to take up space, and be smart when you speak and stand up for yourself and don't just sit in the corner and be quiet because that's what they expect you to do. And then every opportunity you have to present yourself, you do it in a professional manner. You do it with a level of expertise that they can't deny you. And next thing you know, you've climbed a little bit of a ladder and you're doing well for yourself. But I do think it's a constant stigma. Like even now, I've been here for 17 years, and somebody will walk in the weight room, and I share an office with my assistants who are both male, and somebody will walk in and doesn't know any of us. They might be looking for something or trying to fix the air conditioner, whatever it is, and they inherently go to my male assistant thinking they're in charge, right? So I think there is still some stigma and bias that's out there, but I prevent that from happening because I learned from Andrea Hootie years ago that you get up and meet them. You don't let them come in and try to guess who's in charge. You show that you are. So I always stop them before that can happen. But that was something she had talked about, years ago when I met her, and navigating, climbing the ladder as a female.
Yeah, it's as you're talking, like it I really got convicted there for a second because Val will tell you, and we've had sit down like long talks about me like advocating for women in this field and advocating for development, but then also like I've said it many times on my in conversations with male strength coaches that I'm mentoring or anybody really for that matter, that I have a hard time with people. I've always said that I think you can be a very, very good, very, very, very good strength coach for a sport that you didn't play. But I don't think you can be a great strength coach for a sport you didn't play. And I use that typically for somebody that maybe played baseball that wants to be a football strength coach, or or vice versa. And my reason behind it is because if you haven't gone into a stadium with 100,000 people that hate your guts, and it's 4th and 1, like it's hard for you to understand what that feels like, right? And prepare for that. But at the same time, like I'm having this conversation and you're right. Like Kathy, like I would have zero qualms about you being the director for my strength conditioning program for football. So like, where do you guys sit with maybe that situation with football specifically and how, where the ceiling is for a female strength coach with football, I guess.
Do you want me to go first, Kathy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Coach, you and Fred started the love in this field. And then the second one was working with football at Wayne State University with Ruben Mendoza and just showing up every day and pouring into the kids. And I never felt more like wanted, utilized, and valid with that group, that group of men that I worked with. I don't know if it was specifically just that group of guys that we had there, but I'd have to guess after just being in a couple schools and being around a lot of the athletes that Fred has trained over the years that you would get that respect. I think that any kid in this field, I'm sorry, student athlete wise, if you're willing to pour into them, they're probably going to give something back to you. Right. And so I think the ceiling is the limit, right? If you're qualified, if you're good at what you do, if you love what you do, if that's where your passion is, like go, right? Like learn from everybody around you and just attack it head on, just like you would anything else. But that's my opinion. I fell in love with the sport because of football. I actually wanted to be a football strength coach. And I think at one point, me and Fred might have gotten to an argument over who was going to be the football strength coach in the family. He's winning it right now, but it doesn't mean that I still don't love everybody that he's around. Right? I get to play a different role with football because I'm on the Olympic staff here. But I think everybody can do it. Right? If you're qualified and you can do it, just go, put gas on.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look, right, there are women in football strength and conditioning, right? I grew up in Texas. My dad was a high school football coach, so I have a very big space in my heart for football. And I've worked football everywhere I was until I came here. And we don't have football. But I got asked on an interview when I came here by a coach that works with men, and he said, "You're a woman." And I said, "I am, thank you." And then he said, "So how are you going to train my men?" And I said, "Well, you train men and women and you're a guy. How do you train your women?" And he didn't know what to say to that. And I just told him, I said, "Listen, athletes want one thing from strength and conditioning, and that is to see improvement. And it doesn't matter who I am, what color I am, what I look like, but I promise you I can get results. And once they see themselves getting stronger, getting faster, getting more powerful, getting whatever the goal is to be attained, and that I care about them as humans, they're not going to care that I'm a woman standing in front of them." So I think, you just got to build a relationship. You got to know what you're talking about. So if you want to get into football, obviously it's an uphill battle because it's not common. So you better know where a defensive end is and a tight end is and what a zone defense. Like you better know football, right? No, I think go get it.
Yeah, I think it's 100% attainable. I really do. Val's turned me down a couple times for a job on my staffs. That's I think it's paramount to have a female strength coach on staff. Just like I think it's paramount to have an African American strength coach on staff, and making sure that you're balanced staff wise, personality wise, and through gender equality, everything, so that the athletes feel like they can come and they can find the person that they need to find to get to the next level, whatever they need to get to the next level at. I think, guess what? I'll find my earlier statement. Like, I don't see it as being gender. I see it more like experience with the sport of like, I don't think I could be a great, even though I'm a very good strength coach. I don't think I could be a great strength coach for basketball, you know, just because I never played it. Like, I don't understand it that way. And so to your point, Kathy, I think, yeah, if it's in your DNA, it's in your core, like, then anybody can do it at a high level for sure. I believe that as well. You talked a little bit about like the credibility and building, and the knowledge and of the sport, those types of things. I think it's like you said earlier, with that person just walks in and doesn't know anything about anything. What are some of the tips that you would have for younger female strength coaches to build that credibility in this kind of male dominated space? Val, what do you think?
My gut always goes to, I think there's like the things that you learn in school. You got to have like your basic fundamentals of exercise physiology, how a muscle contracts, like where like anatomy, physiology. But then I think that there's also just this applied sense and being humble and knowing that like you may not know everything when you walk in, and every coach is going to be a little bit different. So I think there's probably three levels to it, right? One is having a general understanding of how strength conditioning works, how to write a program, how to be at the fundamental level of making someone perform at a higher level. Two is being able to apply that, right, within your setting, your context. What kind of space are you working with? How many coaches do you have on the floor, et cetera? And then I think that third tier is having the humility to understand who you're working for, where that and what direction they're going. Your administration wants things ran, maybe how your team wants things ran, and being okay with some change that might be changed rooted fundamentally, as long as it's something that is safe and fundamental for the athletes. But on the other side of that, if it's not something that you believe and trust in, that you're able to speak and voice maybe your why and see if you can win that battle. But I'd say pick and choose that. I think those are like the biggest three, I think. And I feel like right now there's a lot of younger coaches that are coming in and they're like, well, I took physiology, I took all these classes and I know how it works. So I'm like, okay, great. So, coach runs 40 minutes over, you now have 20 minutes for lift. Lift got moved, you now, right. And so I think it's so important to understand that, like, yep, we're going to make this beautiful plan, but like, what do you do when all that goes out the window? What's your bread and butter? What do you stick with? And then being okay with like getting some feedback on how to make those things better.
You've dealt with. I'm sure you've dealt with both sides of it. I think you've dealt with. You've been in situations like you are now, where everybody embraces it and it's empowered and the whole deal. And I think that you've also probably been in situations where you've had to deal with some pigheadedness and some challenges. Like, how have you handled the times when people don't understand it, or they don't respect it, the situation, or things aren't, you're not getting the respect that you deserve?
Yeah, I would say as I've gotten older, I handle it much better than I used to. You learn a little more professional dialect the longer you do this, and a little less knee-jerk emotional response. And I think that has helped tremendously, right? When you're young, you just want to blurt what you really want to say, and then you learn that that doesn't help the situation. That just makes it worse, right? And so I think, you have to be the expert, and you have to stand in your own confidence that, like, this is what I believe in. Like, this is what I'm going to, this is why, this is how. And if you don't understand the fundamentals of exercise science and anatomy and physiology and energy systems, you're going to lose the conversation every time because they're just going to talk you in circles, right? And then you have to understand it where you can then speak in their terms. Nobody cares about an oxidative energy system. Nobody, they don't care. They want to know, like, this is a 7-second thing. What do we do? So you got to get out of the sciencey terms. That doesn't make you sound smart. That makes you sound confusing to the people who don't understand, right? So you got to be able to speak to a level they understand. And then I think what I didn't do right early was I didn't rely on the sport coach enough, right? I was a discus thrower in college. I have a lot of Olympic weightlifting experience. I never competed, but I trained in it hoping I was going to compete. But I've never swung a bat in my life. Like, I am pre the big softball wave for women. And so then all of a sudden I get softball, and I think I know about softball, but I don't know anything about softball. And so I think not relying on the coach to explain, like, what is happening when a pitcher is in the circle and how they're driving through the circle, because what it looks like may not be exactly what's happening, or they may be doing it wrong, but you think it's right because you don't know. And so I've gotten a lot better over the years talking to the coaches about mechanics and what they're trying to get accomplished with the arm swing, with the bat, with whatever it may be, and then applying my knowledge of biomechanics and exercise science and everything to then get the result we want. But early on, I was too stubborn to ask the coach and admit that I maybe didn't know. So I think you have to rely on sport coaches more than we want to, possibly. And that's part of that staying humble and then, taking their information and applying your knowledge to it.
Yeah, it's the old adage of, like, genius is taking the complex and making it simple, right? That's the job,
Mhm.
things. But ultimately that's the job, is taking the concept simple, create the buy-in. And that's both with athletes and the coaches. I think what we've kind of landed on right now, which is I don't really like in this field, to be honest with you, is it's pretty much like, okay, it's pretty status quo to make sure that you have a female on staff. It's pretty status quo to make sure you have an African American on staff. It's pretty status quo to, have, whatever, right? And I've always told young coaches, regardless of how you get your job, right? Like, if you're a former athlete, a former Division I athlete, and you use your network of coaches that you've played for to help you get in somewhere, or you get in because of gender or diversity quota or whatever it might be. Like, who cares how you get in? Make sure you're ready to go when you get there, right? Make sure you're prepared and you do it. That's not the reason why you've kept that job. How do we get past the status quo of just making sure that there's just X number of whatever on staff, and and grow this for strength coaches of all genders, ethnicities, sexual orientation, whatever?
Go, Val.
Ugh, it's such a hard question, coach, because like I know that every department in school, right? So sometimes that it's not always the director of strength conditioning that like is making some of these outside recommendations. But I always go back to this, and somebody made this comment to me one day when I was coaching, and I'm like, I thought that everybody knew this and you're supposed to do this. It's like coach the person in front of you. Like fundamentally be the best coach that you can be, right? Like don't stand back. Don't like just watch them with your hands crossed and your cup of coffee in your hand. Like when you coach, make an impact. Like make people around you be like, what are you doing? Right? Like how like you got one person in front of you and you're just like, helping out, hands like I can't tell you how many people where they just that's what they do. They just choose to stand there. Hey, do you see what's next step? Did you read your sheet? Okay, look at the sheet, help them out, fix their posture, like show them what to do physically. I hope that we see a world where like that is normal instead of just standing behind a force plate and looking at the jump that day and trying to make a recommendation. We need to be hands on. We need to show that, like, yes, regardless of your male, female, sexual orientation, that you can go out there and all do that equal job of just coaching up who is in front of you and making them better. I know that didn't directly answer your question because I am not a director. So I'm in the assistant level, but I do know that our here at Notre Dame, we are just sometimes handcuffed by some of the things that maybe the department or HR wants us to do. So Kathy, you're with all of your experience. I'm learning so much by just listening to you. So thank you. Maybe you've got a better answer than I do.
I think it's driven by institutional demographic data and HR, right? So all institutions at any level, they have to put out this thing that says they have a balanced demographic. And so if all of a sudden one of your staffs leans heavily one direction, they're going to apply some pressure in your next hire to balance it. So a lot of times it's not you're out looking, but I think what also is never stated is sometimes you have people making the hires, like, i.e., if I know this is going to be assigned to this sport, maybe that sport coach is pressuring me to hire a female or a minority because of the makeup of their roster, right? And so I don't think it's as easy as just don't worry about it, hire the best person, because sometimes the best person, one of the criteria is to fit the like of the demographic of the people they're working with. I didn't think it mattered. Like I said, I grew up in football. My dad was a coach. I have two brothers. I was always the female. I didn't amongst men, I didn't think it was a big deal. And then I started coaching and there weren't many women. But now in this generation, like the number of women that come to me and say, I didn't think you could do it. I didn't think you could be a female coaching. And now that I'm married and have children, I didn't think you could coach and be a mom. And so I have learned that presence does matter, and there is something to if you can see it, you can be it, that I probably didn't think really existed 25 years ago, as powerful as it is now. And so sometimes, if it's going to be an all women athlete assignment, if you're trying to grow young women outside of sport, maybe if you're splitting hairs, you hire the female. Maybe that's the final straw, but I just think a lot of it is demographically done by institutional data.
Yeah, I would, that's 100% correct. I think there's the challenge of, you got institutional challenges, right? And then you've got just like the kind of the stigmas and the things that go along with, football needs to be a male strength coach or whatever it might be, right? And you're dealing with coaches that are like, "Oh, maybe I don't really want a female in that role, or I don't really want a male in that role." I think, the way that I've approached this being a director for pretty much my entire career has been like, you have to set the vision. And I think what you just said there, Kathy, about seeing, they have to see it, and so what I've done many times, because and not to try to be like I blew up the first football or something like that, but from the very first staff I had, because I was raised by a single mom, like I knew what a female on staff could do for a lot of these guys that were that grew up with single parents, mostly moms. I knew what that could do for them because that's what it did for me. And so I saw the value in that, but I did. I worked for a coach that did not want a female on staff. And so what I did was I brought in a female yoga instructor. I brought in a female nutritionist. I brought in a female return to play specialist. Roles that maybe he accepted as being more female oriented, maybe. But then once they got in there, because I hired the right people, they freaking went and they were coaching guys every bit as hard, and if not harder, than some of the male strength coaches I had. And they broke down the barriers, it broke down the walls and the perceptions that some of these coaches had, to where I didn't have to fight those battles as much later in my career, because I was going to hire the best person. I didn't care. I was going to hire the best person. And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to paint the picture, and then we have to execute on it. And then both sides, right? I got to hire the right person, and the person's got to rise to the challenge, and I think that's Kathy, you brought up a kind of a really, this is again, just hiring women for most of my career. Like this always went through the back of my head. And it's like, we'll just deal with it when it comes. Right. But like the biology of having kids, right. And going through that, there's a lot of issues that go with that. Right. It's the physical issues that come with having freaking a human, in your body. Right. There's the time, that's needed to be away for maternity leave or even paternity leave for that matter. How have you guys navigated that? What advice do you have for the young female strength coach that's like, how do I have a kid and be in this field when I'm working 18 hours a day?
Well, mine are much older, but my first advice is you can do it. Okay. But you have to have some help, right? I am graced by an amazing husband, right, who took the kids to school and picked them up because I'm at work long before school and I'm still at work when they get out. Now mine are old enough, they can ride the bus, they can be home alone. My youngest walks to and from school, right? But there's a period of time where they can't do that, right? So Chris always did the transportating, right? Nicole was born December 9th, which was finals week. And then it went into winter break. So I didn't miss any work, right? I had to come up here and sit on the bench because men's basketball was their winter break. So the timing of that was really simple. And I didn't miss work. I didn't take maternity leave. Life was good because it was the holiday break, right? Morgan was born at the end of January. And then at week 4, we ended up in the hospital with some RSV. And I spent 2 months in the Cook Children's Hospital. Well, I did not come to work. And I didn't care at all because I was going to be with my baby. But I had 2 GAs at the time that kept the thing afloat. And I realized this life was way more important than my job. And I had coaches who didn't even know I was gone. They're texting me and I'm like, oh yeah, Coach so-and-so being there to help. They had no idea I was in the PICU at a hospital, which was fine. That made it really much easier. Right. And so I just think you need help. You need to let your kids be a part of your job. That's not work-life balance. Bringing your kids to your work is not work-life balance. But let them be a fan and let the teams be a fan of you. My baseball guys were so protective of me when I was pregnant. Like they were throwing medicine balls and somebody was like, I don't know, 10 feet away from me and they were yelling at them because they might hit me with a medicine ball. It's like, we're going to be okay. But, embrace it and let everybody be a part of it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Val, you got anything out of that?
Kathy, that was so good. No, I agree. I think the day that I found out I was pregnant, I was most afraid to tell anybody because I thought I was going to get fired. Not gonna lie, I just felt like I couldn't do it because there's just not a lot out there, or at least that I know of. Kathy, I wish I knew you or sooner, but yeah. Georgia is a part of, I would say our dynamic's a little bit different. My husband's also in strength conditioning. So we have a schedule. We will tag team that schedule together. Thankfully, the coaches that we all work for here are very family oriented and want families around. We try not to abuse that power of being able to bring the kiddos around, but she only knows Go Irish. She thinks the Under Armour logo is a Notre Dame logo, not an Under Armour logo. And I love that all of my female athletes get to watch me do this because one day, no matter what profession they're in, they're going to have, if they want to have children, they'll walk through that. So I love that they got to see me 9 months pregnant, running a beep test outside in August, carrying all the equipment out there, to watching me be a mom and bringing her out to practice. And so, yeah, there are days where they sometimes need to see that example too. And agree 100%. You can 1000% be a strength coach and be a mom, and it's needed. We need more of them out there. So
1,000%. And I think what you said, Kathy, is everybody makes it bigger than it is, right? Because you're worried because you want to do a great job. You don't want to miss work, but at the same time, like you want to be there for your family. Whether that's you're a male strength coach or a female strength coach. And I think even me adopting kids and being in the Ukraine for a month during the football season, like, that scared the hell out of me going to my coach and saying, I'm going to be gone for a month and it is what it is. Right. Like, I think knowing that everything's going to be fine, people are going to figure it out. Is it an inconvenience for them? Sure. But, inconveniences are just a part of life. Right. And they're going to figure it out. And a lot of times what I've found, especially being a director, is you refine processes, you make things better, you make things more efficient. When you have to scale it back, you're like, oh man. And you also gain an appreciation for a person when you know that when they're not there, you're like, holy crap, thank God you're back.
Mhm.
That's one of the things as well. So, yeah, I think that's important. I do think that's a part of it's one of the things that I would always ask a young female strength coach intern that I would have mentor would be like, okay, you're going to have a strategy for this. right? Whether it's you try to do it and time it right during the season and the breaks or whatever, or you just know that you're gonna leave during this time period and you've saved some money and whatever, right? It's like there's gonna be some planning that goes into that. And as long as you have a plan, and know that plans are gonna get messed up, it's not gonna go be perfect, then you're gonna be just fine. And there's a place for this. And I think one thing I want to kind of add to what you said there about the work-life balance. You guys have done it. I know Val, I see, all the pictures you guys send all the time. Like bringing your kids to work is the fundamental thing that you need to do, whether, to maintain as much of a work-life balance as you can, because it is the coolest thing in the world for those kids to be around these type A, highly motivated, diverse, unique people, and to experience that early, especially in George's age and your kid's age, Kathy, like that's important, and it's one of the perks that they get, for having to not have us at their little league games and those types of things, and so like I think that's important as any parent that might be listening to this. Let's talk a little bit about like mentorship pipeline, the developing the next generation here. Like what are we telling, young female coaches that want to get into this field about the good, the bad, and the ugly right now of just strength and conditioning in general?
Go ahead, Val. You're closer to them than I am.
I think the good is student athletes are still 18 to 23-year-olds old. They all still need to learn how to push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, run, sprint, sport dependent. The bad is, and this is someone who has a PhD, sometimes I feel like we get a little too stuck in the weeds with technology and you kind of want to skip some steps, or I want to just go be a director of sports science without any experience or being able to, that side of the field really frustrates me sometimes. And because I think there's such validity and importance in it, but I think that right now there's just a lot of, with some of the younger coaches, on how to utilize that data. Or, hey, if you don't have it, like, what do you do without it, right? Like, you still have to do things in a manner that's going to help increase performance. I think that's kind of like maybe the ugly, but I think that this field is such a wonderful thing to be a part of. I don't remember who said this to me, but they said, when you're looking at sports performance teams, and the two most important people that can be a part of that are going to be your athletic trainer and your strength conditioning coach. At the end of the day, at some point, that's probably what they started with, was just those two. And I was like, dang, you're right? Like strength coaches can be sports scientists. Strength coaches can kind of wear a lot of hats. And I take pride in that, right? And I think that all of us should. We are educated people. We probably know more, right? And have the most education out of anybody that potentially is on the coaching staff. And so being able to hone that in and help athletes develop is huge. And I think that we need to take that with pride, but also keep it close to us and make sure that you're helping the athletes that are in front of you and not getting so stuck on these things that may not be of importance right now.
Yeah, great. Kathy, anything to add?
I think it's changed, right? Like Ron, you remember when we first started, you met this 18-year-old and you had him for 4 years, maybe 5, and you really got to see them grow and mature in a lot of ways, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally. And now with this open transfer and the new wave of athletics, you may only see them for a season. You may only have them for a semester and a half, or you may still have them for 4 years. So I think learning to navigate this new way and how to build a relationship quickly, is a new challenge. And I think, to your point, Val, yes, young people just seem to be really into book and data and sports science. We swung the pendulum so far that they've lost sight on. It's still a people business, and it's people first. And, you're going to have to do that. And you may have to move, and that's okay. And you may have to volunteer, and that's okay, but it's all going to work out. But somewhere in their academic world, they're being told, get a degree, get a certification, and poof, you're going to get a job. And that's still not exactly how it works. And so I think that's still kind of a frustration for me, that people want to volunteer and we tell them no because we already have 10 volunteers, right? Like somebody wants to work for free and we're like, no, sorry, we already got people. And so I wish there was a way, to not make it so exhausting to help young people, you know, because you can't have 20 interns. Like at some point there is too many, right? So I hate that we turn away people that just want to get in sometimes, but that's also a reality of it. Maybe you have to move somewhere just to get in. So I think that's still one of the uglies that's been around for 25 years, is it's just not easy to get in. But then once you get in, if you do a good job, it's wonderful. But getting in is still a challenge that has lasted this entire time.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, just like the sports are evolving within, just the transactional nature of it. I think it's the same with young coaches. I've actually found it really hard to hire young coaches, men, women, whatever, just because they're like, you want me to work how long for how much money? Or, I got to do what? I got to carry. So I think, one thing that I've been preaching quite a bit lately is that this isn't, we live in a time where you can literally make money online selling sweaters for cats. Like if you wanted to, right? Like you can do a lot of things in this field to make money and support what you're doing. And your earning potential is not necessarily capped by what you're doing. And you don't have to have this reductionist line of thinking where it's either or, like it could be college sports or performance or, online or whatever. Like I think you could interchange quite a bit if you're doing the networking, if you're making yourself relevant and you're making sure that you have the expertise. So Val, you're probably the closest to this, but like when you're talking like where this field is going and where you see the opportunities for young female strength coaches, what advice are you giving them for their career?
Just had a chat with it's one of our seasonal assistants. And I think the first thing I asked her is, where's your location? Right? Can you move anywhere, or are you kind of stuck somewhere? And it's okay to be stuck, right? But you kind of got to know where your circle of comfort is, right? I know what ours is, right? I would love to be in a 2-hour plane ride away from my family, but like that opens up the door if you're going to be 30 minutes. Next is, yeah, do you want to be private or college? And if you need to potentially leave the collegiate round and go into a private facility, or maybe you start your own business, or you get an online platform, right? Like these kids, I feel like I'm at the cutoff of not knowing all of the technology and how to use TikToks, but it's the amount of opportunity there is endless. And I know, Coach, you've preached to me a million times of like starting something like that and being able to take it with me. So I need to get gutsy and do it. But I was talking to our person, and I was like, you can find ways to make money, and then you can still network in that area, right? We get involved. If you can't volunteer, can you go grab coffee? Can you jump and be a part of the things that are going on in the environment that you want to be in? And sometimes that is going to be where you do work at a seasonal employee potentially for 20 hours per week. And then when that opportunity opens up in the space that you want to be in, you're ready and you're prepared for that. But that sometimes takes a little bit of work, and you might have to put it on a slow boil for a little while. But I think the opportunity in sports performance, I think, is going to continue to grow with the opportunities for sports science. And as that field kind of does open up, I love it. But I do think that we still need really good coaches, really good female leadership and mentorship. And that can happen in a number of ways, from climbing the tree traditionally, being an assistant strength coach, GA route, or going on the private side and developing that route and coming over. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities there. But I would say start with networking. Start with your region first of where you want to be, find out which sector you'd like to be in ideally, and that's maybe like your bread and butter. And then how do you find ways to make up around that as you continue to grow, and where do your passions lie? Is it in coaching? Is it in sports science? Is it in a director of sports performance or director of strength conditioning role, and figure out ways to climb up?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you didn't say that that I think you do better than just about anybody is developing the multiple skills, right? And gaining credibility across many different platforms. One, so having your PhD, having a sports science interest, right? Um, just all these different kind of components, like you're differentiating yourself by gaining some additional education, some additional certifications or whatever. And I think that's where I think this field is headed. And I think the young people are listening to this. To me, I think we're on a dangerous slope because like I look at our field very similar to like an educator, like a teacher, right? There's nobody that's more important than the 8th grade teacher, the 9th grade teacher, whatever. But at the same time, they're paid like crap. They get treated like crap, and those types of things. And like people, it's harder to retain teachers. It's harder to keep them going into it. And it's a good job. It's a noble job. It's great. But like we're on a dangerous slope. Not to mention you combine that with where AI is going. Like eventually you're going to be able to get a blood prick and it's going to spit out the perfect workout, the perfect diet, the perfect whatever. And like us writing a program isn't a differentiator anymore.
Right.
There's always going to be accountability and there's always going to be those pieces. I get that. But Like, and so you have to create additional skills. You have to, and I think that entrepreneurship skill, I think, is important because, like, the way I look at my career at this point is that I'm a bubble. I'm in the middle. And instead of me saying I want to be $1 million strength coach, great. Okay. Coaching, that might be $100,000 bubble for me, right? That's my passion. That's what I love to do. I would do it for free. I literally have done it for free, right? But I want to have 9 other bubbles of $100,000 that are going to get me to the $1 million. That's going to provide security. That's going to provide additional skills. It's going to provide, a lot of different things that maybe coaching doesn't give me in that way. And if coaching goes away, I'm not completely like my hands up and like, what am I going to do? And so I think one of those lessons that, Kathy, you and I have talked about quite a bit is that networking piece and taking advantage of what does exist, not just in the strength world, but, strength world is where we're at right now. What are some of those networking opportunities that exist for female strength coaches right now, and how they best should kind of navigate that in their career?
Well, I think you should never turn down any opportunity that you're able to fit into your calendar, number one. So don't pigeonhole yourself because you never know. You may think that's the dumbest thing or you're not interested in that at all. Then you go do it and go, "Ah, that's pretty cool. I kind of enjoyed that." And so I think anytime you get asked to speak, the answer should be yes. Anytime you get asked to write something, the answer needs to be yes. Any conference you can attend, yes. You got to be more than just bars and plates, right? Because that's the easy part. And to your point with AI and things coming, and like we're so heavily involved in the recruiting process now that we weren't in 25 years ago. And so, you got to be able to make player profiles and recruiting presentations and things like that. You got to find a bigger niche than just the weight room floor, right? To help keep you relevant and marketable. I think there's a lot of professional organizations out there now that help promote women. Right. You have, like a We Coach, for example. I think you can get involved in some of those opportunities and kind of see where that leads you in kind of a different network than just your current profession, right? I think if you get into some of those specific certifications, like your baseball, softball, your TPIs with golf, now all of a sudden maybe you're at a clinic with nothing but sport coaches. Well, that's a different conversation than what we have at our strength coach conferences. And so I think you got to put yourself out there where you're surrounded by more than just your like and grow those networks and see where they lead. You never know what's going to come across your desk then if you've done all that and handled yourself, in a professional manner when you get the opportunity. Every interaction is an interview. I tell all young people that. You're coming in just to say hi, and I'm going to say yes or no if you're going to stay on my stack for future employment on how you entered my office. And so every interaction's an interview, and every interaction makes an impression, and you only get one chance to make a first one. So make sure it's a good one. That's a big piece of advice I tell all young people.
Yeah, I was looking at a little bit in that for like you got the female breakfast at the CSE conference, and you got some of these maybe groups that kind of exist where there's opportunity, but you took it in a whole other area that I think is super important. That yeah, you have to put yourself in different rooms. If you're just in the weight room, you're going to be limited in your network. You're going to be limited in your knowledge base. And one thing that I had to learn was you're going to be limited in your confidence, because like, I negotiated a multi-million-dollar deal in China through a translator, that I'm sitting there with the guy that brought the family that brought the Olympics to China. And I'm negotiating this. And it wasn't until I was in the room and I was super nervous that I realized, like, he's just as nervous as I am. And we're just figuring this out together. And, neither one of us really knows where it's going to go. But the confidence that gave me was like, man, like literally like a CEO. Like that's where that kind of spawned from. And I think when you do that, you gain that confidence that you're going to be okay in those moments of transition. You're going to be okay if you don't have strength and conditioning be the only thing in your life. And I think that's super important. But getting out, also talking to Kathy, talking to Val, walking and asking people questions like one of the questions I always ask is, what's one of the biggest mistakes you've made and how you learned from it? Because if I can avoid Kathy's mistakes or I can avoid Valerie's mistakes, then maybe I can get there a little bit quicker, right? And maybe go a little bit further. And so I think that's super, super important. If last question here really is like, if the young female intern just walked in the weight room very first day, like what does she need to be doing tomorrow to make sure she develops a career that lasts? Kathy, we'll start with
Well, she has to come back. Like, right? Like, I mean, as simple as it sounds, but like everybody can go one day, but you gotta stack days. So I would tell her, make sure you come back tomorrow with the same energy and the same willingness and open-mindedness. And then it's just never too soon to start your network, right? You don't wait. You don't observe for a semester. You don't wait till you get your degree. You don't wait till you become an intern. Like, you got to start your network from day one. And so hopefully whoever's mentoring you has a network of their own. Right. And so when I have young people, I send out, 10, 11 names, especially here in the DFW area or within a couple hours of driving, that I know will respond. Because unfortunately, in our profession, not everybody responds. That's another sticking point for me. But I'll send them people that will respond. Right. And then I'm like, you got to go do a site visit, go meet, like, start your network now. Don't wait, and then just keep showing up, keep pounding the pavement, and stay professional the whole time, and you'll make it.
Yeah, Val, before you answer, I was gonna follow up, but you answered it. Like by giving a site visit is a great way to do that, right? Getting into a different room, having a conversation. That coach gets to see your passion, they get to see your energy. You get to experience and pick up other things, and it makes it accelerates your growth. Val, what's something tactical that you would tell that person?
Be afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. I can't tell you how many times we all can look back on something we programmed and was like, yeah, that was silly. Write it up, look at it. I think Kathy, you said this, and Coach Mack, you brought it up too. I sometimes underestimate all the things that I have done. That is my it's a problem that I'm working through, right? Like I sometimes forget that I have a PhD and I write a lot and I have done that throughout my entire career. And you write on the mistakes too. Like Kathy, you said, if you got an opportunity to write it up, yeah, hey, we implemented this hamstring based protocol and it didn't work. Great, tell everybody about it or tell somebody about it. Right, write it up. And so I would say, don't be afraid to make mistakes and write those things down, learn from them, and then go reach out to somebody and figure out a way to make it better. So if you know somebody is working with another field sport based team and they have similar injuries that popped up throughout the year, or they ran into the same issues, can you go learn from them and maybe pick their brain and rewrite something up and then go implement that again? We can't be afraid in this field to make mistakes, but also change and adapt as you go, because every team is not going to be the same and every athlete isn't going to be the same. And so sometimes as a young strength coach, that can be frustrating, and it's hard to work through because if you're like me, you blame yourself, and you can't do that.
Yeah, I want to build on that because I think the tactical piece of advice that I would give to follow up what you just said, Val, would be document it. Find a way to document that, whether that's in a journal or like what I tell people all the time is, make a video about it. Like make a video with what that lesson was, how you learned from it. And because, that's a way for you to crystallize it in your mind by writing it down or by creating some piece of content that you can reference when you need to or share with somebody. But you're also starting to create a little bit of a following with the people that are walking a couple steps behind you to be able to, again, avoid that mistake potentially, right? And by putting it out there, you're building some credibility as well. Now, unfortunately, like Kathy and I are on the other side of this, where it's the old adage, like we forgot more than most people know, right? We're forgetting way too much now. At least I am, and so having that documented and out there, I think it reinforces it in yourself to be able to revisit that as well. I know what my piece of advice would be. My piece of advice would be to reach out to you two and learn from both of you. And just because, hey, you've done it, you're doing it at a high level. I mean, director for 17 years, top strength coach at Notre Dame, PhD, got the career, you know, in our hand. I mean, I think you guys are doing it the right way, but more importantly, you're the right type of people, like the passion, the energy, the emotional IQ that you have with your athletes and the way that you go about it. That's why you've been able to last. That's why you'll continue to last, and people can take note from that. So I appreciate you guys coming on, sharing. Thanks so much for doing this and spending some time.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. It was fun.